Hey, welcome to the channel. We hope that you enjoy today's stories and check out the chapters on the video to see all the stories for today. But before we get into this video, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to get notified when we release a new video. So let's get into the video.
Creepy experience painting a ceiling mural in Atlanta, Georgia. I recently got a Reddit account to share my stories. I wanted to share them for a while, but I never get on here, so I don't think about it. But I've been watching YouTube all day, raining outside, and started watching those glitches in the Matrix videos and thought to finally make this post. Just a quick overview of myself and the who, why, what, etc. that leads to what happened. I am an artist living in Charlotte, North Carolina. I paint ceiling murals for a restaurant group, traveling to different locations around the United States. I paint a script of full books on ceilings for this restaurant group. It's pretty cool. My wife and I were in Atlanta, Georgia back in early 2016. She read to me, and I wrote. We worked at night and usually got to the job around 6:30 p.m. I think it was the second or third week of May. We got coffee, went in through the side door and talked until the last construction worker left. I started working around 7:45 p.m. I set up the ladder and had to prime a wall section above the bar area. 3-inch brush, a gallon of flat, beige color paint and a 9-inch roller set up. I started cutting the wall in and worked for no more than 20 minutes. My wife said she was going to change into different clothes in our van on the parking deck. I worked for another 4 to 5 minutes and put my brush down on the top of the paint bucket. Get down the ladder to smoke a cigarette, and then all of a sudden, I wake up laying on one of the bench seats across the restaurant. Looking back up at my wall as I stepped off the ladder was my last memory. The lights in the place were all flashing in succession with each other. I was scared. Like a scary movie. I didn't see my wife. I looked at my phone, and 2.5 hours had gone by. I called for her, called on the phone, no answer. I immediately went to the parking garage and got to our van, and she was just waking up in the back of it in our little sitting space. This was not like us. We just don't both fall asleep out of nowhere, at the same time no less, and we had been used to the work all night sleep all day since February. She looked at her phone and freaked out due to how long she had been asleep. She also didn't remember falling asleep, same as me. On the way back up to the job, I explained to her about the lights flashing and we talked to the security guard who reset/turned them off for us. He said someone had tripped the security alarm but was oblivious to what could have done it. The alarm system wasn't turned on because of the construction workers. We also used the back door a lot and never set any alarm off. Either way, just weird it happened at the same time. But the scariest thing was when I saw my paintbrush on top of the paint can on top of the ladder. The brush was still wet. Flat latex paint dries up a brush in less than 2 hours in an air-conditioned environment. I put that brush down at almost 8 p.m. It was 10:45 p.m. when I picked up my brush again. My brush's timeline was only 5 to 10 minutes, whereas my wife and I's was nearly 3 hours.
I saw a ghost car and found out there was an accident there recently. This happened today and I am still in shock. So tonight, I did a 2-hour drive to go back home, and it was nighttime. I was getting out of the mountains, which is followed by desert and not an exit for miles ahead. There are only 2 lanes on this part of the highway. I was driving on the right when all of a sudden, I see headlights coming towards me pretty fast. I couldn't see what kind of car it was, but I drive an SUV and these lights were low, so I knew it was a lower car. I look in both mirrors to watch the car. It was just us 2 cars here, and then I physically turn my head to see the car. I see it in my blind spot now. I turn my head back to the road where I'm admiring the big bright full moon when all of a sudden, the spot where the car's headlights were supposed to be goes pitch black. I look back and didn't see a car. Mind you, there was no exit nearby. We were just getting out of the mountains. There would have been absolutely nowhere for this car to go. I was so confused, and when I look back ahead, I see a big lit up cross on the side of the road. all white lights. I started to get spooked out. I'd done this drive a million times and never saw that. This was my first time driving at night in a while, since I had a weird occurrence the previous time too. I was speechless. I decided to Google it and realized some people see ghost/phantom cars. One person suggested searching the areas for recent accidents. That's when I find two articles from a month ago, on a date that was significant to me. An elderly man died in that area in a singular. He was the only car/fatality crash. Something else that's a crazy coincidence too? He was a resident of the extremely small town I live in. I am genuinely so shaken up. I wonder if he was showing me what happened moments before he passed away. Or warning me. I have no idea, but what I do know is that I was and am of state mind and saw a car disappear into thin air. If you're enjoying today's video about stories of our lives, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this and more. Now, let's get back to the video.
How do I know ghosts exist? You have no reason to believe me. I'm just a random Reddit user, but I know ghosts exist without ever having seen one. My parents bought a house in '83 and I was just a kid at the time. It's a great house. With 4 bedrooms, built in 1920, brick, nice-sized yard. I didn't learn about this until years later, but right after moving in my dad saw a full-bodied apparition. My dad is the most logical person, a real skeptic. He was walking from the kitchen to the stairs, looked into the living room and saw an old man sitting in the corner of the room. He looked away and then looked back and it was gone. The granddaughter of the original house owner had a small corner shop on our street. She was old at this time, but Dad told her about the man he'd seen in the house. She brought out a picture of her grandfather and it was exactly him. Down to the cravat and clothing. Dad was shocked. To this day it still amazes my dad. He has no reasonable explanation, so he's come to call it a ghost. After doing research on the house, the man didn't die there but lived there a long time. For its time it must have been the nicest house around because the others are all wood frames. There were 2 funerals held in the house. Their son worked as a brakeman at the railroad and when he was 15, he was crushed. They also had a daughter who drank carbolic acid and had her funeral in the house. All documented. So, lots of sadness for the original owners. As a teenager, I was recording songs from the radio and when I played it back there was the voice of a really old man saying as clear as day, "I believe the booger man has a hold of you." Creepy old man's voice. Right in the middle of the song, nothing else. Didn't hear it while recording, only on playback. My mom had our pastor come and listen to it and bless the house. I'm sure someone old from back then would have thought I was awful though. The teen years of fighting with your parents. Just not respecting them enough. Wish I still had the tape, I'm not sure what happened to it. I can still hear the twang of the voice in my head, and it still creeps me out, kind of like Deliverance style, a really rural area. There was also the time of the thermostat being pushed all the way up by dial in the summer, the TV going on and off, and things like that. Oh, and a few years ago Dad saw me come into their house and walk into the kitchen without looking at him or speaking. It wasn't me. I live near them and come in 5 minutes later. Of course, I said hi to him. I'd never just come in and ignore him. This really creeps me out to think that something mimicked me like that. I don't understand why that would happen, but he swore up and down it did. Anyway, you guys don't know me or my dad, but he would never make anything like this up. It really confounds him. That's why I believe in ghosts. I really think they are just in a different dimension or frequency.
My childhood home has some paranormal activity, but my parents built it. This is going to be pretty long-winded, I already feel. So my apologies in advance. I grew up in a home my parents insisted could not be haunted because they had built it themselves, but we all experienced weird stuff there. I had a bedroom on the second floor, and I hated it. I slept in my parents' bed, on the couch, or in the spare room until I was 12, and they told me I had to grow up. Something about being in that room filled me with this deep, inescapable dread. Like walking in was so heavy and just wrong. There were 2 huge windows, and I used to stack something in front of them because I could not escape the feeling that something was staring at me from those windows. Even now, 10 years removed from that house, I have a recurring nightmare where I walk into my old room and then windows are open, and I break into a cold sweat and wake up near in tears. Mind you, this is a second-story window. Once, my high school boyfriend, now husband, and I were sitting in the room, doing whatever teenagers do, and from outside that window we heard a deep-throated, snarling growl. Like maybe the sound a big dog makes when it's about to lunge, that sort of sound. Not from a distance, from right outside. We absolutely booked it. We would also hear people who weren't in the house at the time. My mom, my dad, my grandmother. Clear requests like,
"Take the dog out."
or,
"Come for dinner."
but the person in question was never there. Always at work or out for groceries. We just learned to ignore anyone if they didn't come and physically knock. Speaking of my husband, anytime he would stay for any period of time, we would cover this big mirror my mom made me keep hanging across from my bed because it gave off the same weird energy as the windows, and because both of us, more than once, saw glimpses of some white fabric-looking substance swishing out of view in the mirror when we glanced that way. This is not even to mention the objects going missing, doors opening and shutting, footsteps, shadows, etc. Just weird. We left when I was 16 and I still cannot rationalize it. I was afraid of the dark until the day we moved. As soon as we left, I was completely fine with it. No more weird dread.
How could this be possible? When I was about 4 years old, around 50 years ago, my family was camping somewhere in the southwestern US, or maybe northern Mexico. After camp was set up, my dad and sister went to look around, and my mother went to get water to boil from the creek or river. I was sitting on the picnic table playing with a doll or something, cross-legged. After a while, I felt like I was rising up, but my legs stayed in the cross-cross position. Then I looked down and saw the picnic table a few feet below me. I was not freaked out and felt pretty happy and curious about it, but not any different than any other new fun experience I'd had in my 4 years of life. It took no effort on my part, and I felt nothing holding me and sensed no presence. I enjoyed looking around at things and feeling the sun and the breeze and insects buzzing. Everything seemed quite still, and I felt very content. I heard my mother coming back to camp and I came gently down. I hopped off the table and ran to tell my mom that I floated, but of course, she thought I was playing. I never experienced anything like that again. Has anyone heard of this happening to others, or have any theories of what may have made it possible? Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed today's video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to see more videos about stories of our lives. Click on one of these videos to watch more and see you soon.